Good morning. Welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. It is Sunday, March 10th, 2024. This would be episode 102. Happy daylight savings time to everybody who that affects. If you live in Arizona, it does not affect you, but it is affecting me because I am currently in California, and so I am getting an extra hour. Or no, I think I'm losing an hour. Yeah, I don't care. So, I had a incredibly fun, unique gig last night down in the San Diego area that my good friend Andrew Norelli, which, by the way, do yourself a favor and YouTube search Andrew Norelli, Norelli, and check out his David Letterman set, probably one of the funniest late-night sets I have ever seen. And I am very fortunate that he and I are friends, and he books me for as much stuff as he can. And I appreciate it very much. So last night's gig was unique for many reasons. First of all is the show was for a nonprofit support group for people who have had loved ones who have unfortunately unalived themselves, which, of course, is a very, very heavy, very tragic situation. And so there is a group of individuals, a support group down here in San Diego, who organize themselves and who support each other through the grief and through the tragedy of having lost somebody close to them from them unaliving themselves. So it is very, very heavy. The other unique thing about this gig is it was at a martial arts dojo or training hall. So the owner and organizer of this martial arts training hall, unfortunately, lost his brother, and so started this support group. And he was a martial arts master and had this dojo already, where they would have, typical like training classes and martial arts classes and all of that fun stuff. And so he started a support group and started gathering a community of people who could support each other through that grief and through that tragedy. And then as part of that, they started doing a comedy show to help raise awareness and raise funds. And it was a very interesting situation to walk into. Now, first of all, so we did the comedy show right there in their dojo, like in the middle. I mean, it was one of the biggest dojos I've ever seen, by the way. It was very, very large. Usually when I picture a dojo, I just think of like a small, like office suite, like in a strip mall, like next to the subway in a strip mall. And it's just like one sort of small room that has a mat and low ceilings, and then there's maybe like a computer up front and maybe like a small back area with, a bathroom, and a supply closet. And, the whole room is, 20 feet by 20 feet, and that's the whole dojo. That was not the case with this dojo. It was very, very large. It was almost like it was in like an industrial part of a suburb of San Diego. To be honest, I don't actually remember what suburb we were in. Like it had really high ceilings. It was like 30 feet high ceiling, like really high. When you walked in, there was a reception area. Off to the right, there was a whole like kitchen area that had 2 bathrooms. There was another room, like a decent sized room close to that room where they had, it looked like sort of a secondary training area, which was a smaller room, but it seemed like maybe that was something to where they could have like specialized classes there for maybe like a smaller, like 10 or 15 person like group class. And then from there, you walked into the main training hall area, which just had a gigantic floor. They had like a rack that probably had maybe 10 or 12 heavy bags hanging from it. On the side of the wall, you know, there was these like cabinets that had like, it looked like 40 sparring helmets, and 40 of those, I don't even know what you call them. They're, they're, I don't even know how you would describe them. So they're kind of like heavy bags, but they come up from the ground, right? So they have a big weight at the bottom of them, like a big circular weight, like about the size of a tire, like a big round thing, which I think there's maybe water or sand in them. And then, you know, attached to it is a cylindrical punching apparatus. I don't know why I'm struggling to find words to describe what these are. Anybody who's ever been to a dojo, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, and there's probably a word for it. You know, it's like a punching dummy, but it's not a human. It's just like a round, like pole, but like a wide circumference. You know, it's probably like a 12-inch diameter padded pole that comes up maybe 4 feet off the ground and is attached to that big circular base, you know, which weights it down so you can punch it. Anyway, I mean, it seemed like he had somewhere between, I said 40, that might be a little much. It was maybe around, but it was a lot. It was like, I saw like 20, maybe 25 of them. There was like a whole bunch of like nunchucks. There was a whole basket full of like plastic guns and knives and stuff. I assume, obviously, you know, they train on like weapons, disarmament, and all of that stuff. There was this huge bin full of bow staffs popping up, and that was just one side. You know, on the other side, you know, there were all of these like belts on the wall, and just a huge matted area. I mean, it was really large. And then that wasn't even the full extent of the dojo. They had this portable divider, and behind that, they had a whole parkour like setup with all of these like mats and walls and ramps and stuff that literally said parkour on them. It was like a branded parkour gymnasium. And that was like in the back of the dojo. And then you went outside, and then they had a whole outside training area that was all part of this training hall. So, I mean, it was a very large, very impressive facility. And for the show, they just dragged in a bunch of chairs from all over the dojo and set up. I think they said close to 30 or maybe 35 people, which felt about right. And they had a small portable stage and a microphone. And anyway, so they invited the members of this support community to come have a laugh and to come enjoy the comedy show. And man, I'll tell you, it was a very unique situation because I showed up a little early to the show, a little earlier than I normally would. I was about an hour and a half early, but I had my keyboard and I wanted to set up my keyboard and, you know, just kind of get a feel for the venue. And so I showed up, and then I met the owner, who I'd mentioned, unfortunately, lost his brother, and also ran the dojo, and you know, he was a martial arts expert, and you know, he just a really cool, genuine guy. And so I had a chance to talk to him and just be a little frank with him and go, hey, you know, how do I approach this show? Obviously, there are some topics that I'm very obviously going to avoid. Like, I do a whole routine about how I called the suicide hotline, which is a true story. but I have a whole bit about it. I'm going, well, I'm probably not going to do that bit. But then I really started to overthink like every bit that I have. It's like, whoa, can I even, I used to do a bit about how I have resting murderer face. I'm going, well, will that be triggering if I bring up murder? And then, I do a bit about, how I had a near-death experience because I came this close to getting married, and I'm just worried. It's like, oh, well, if I say near-death, is that going to be triggering? Because all of these people have had someone who, who did experience death, and so I really started to get concerned because, I mean, I could talk about this for a while, but it's the conundrum, if you will. It's the friction between me as an artist standing up there and expressing my truth and sharing what is true to me and sharing my experiences. And the other side of that is, well, yeah, but I'm also there to entertain and connect with this particular audience. And I'll tell you, this debate can go either way, and I see both sides of the debate when it is a debate, which is, on the one side, it's like, well, I'm an artist, I should be able to express and share my truth. And it's like, well, I call the suicide hotline, so I should be able to share that joke even to a community of suicide support, of a suicide support group. The other side of that is, no, I am a professional. I'm I'm here to serve the audience. And especially in this particular audience they literally have one thing in common, which is they are all grieving the loss of a loved one, and some of them recently. So would it not be in the best interest of the audience and in the best interest of the show that I curate my material, alleviate, refine, cut out altogether certain material and certain topics? And that's the side of the debate that I am currently landing on in general, which is I'm not there to offend anybody, and I'm not there to push my art in a manner that supersedes the sensitivity, especially in that circumstance where the sensitivity is so very clearly prevalent and is the one combining universal factor that has brought this audience together. And so I did get a little, I probably, if anything, was starting to overthink it. And, I started going through so much of my material in my head going, oh, well, if I say that, will that be offensive? Oh, if I say it that way, wouldn't that be triggering? And by the time I was headlining, and so my buddy Andrew opened and just did an incredible job. He's so funny. And then there was actually a guest in the community who had been taking some stand-up comedy classes. So he went up and did maybe 5 or 6 minutes. And, he, bless his heart, he did the best he could. And then there was a feature act named Melissa Greenberg, who I've worked with several times before, although I've not worked with her since the pandemic. So it was actually really great to see her again. And she did really, really well. And then it was me, and I was the headliner. And I had been taking mental notes of all kinds of things going on with this dojo, just things that I saw. A lot of the things that I described. I also noticed that on the walls there were a lot of bulletins that had like rules and code of conducts. There was this poster on the wall that said like the rules of kickboxing. Number 1, hands up. Number 2, chin down. Number 3, move your head. Number 4, circle left. Number whatever. And then there was this other poster that had code of conduct, and there was like 22 rules of the code of conduct. Wash your, don't show up with unwashed, workout clothes, and don't wear certain outfits if you aren't ranked properly, and be respectful. It was, and the code of conduct was really random. And so I just went on stage and I just started riffing. I riffed a lot with the audience, just observing what was there. There was a woman there who had like part of her hair dyed purple. So I started doing all these sort of like liberal kind of feminism jokes about, it wasn't jokes about being about liberal or feminism. It was jokes about how that's what she looks like. And I'm doing it all with love and good energy, and they loved it. The audience was having so much fun. And then I just went after this dojo and I just riffed off of every possible thing I could think of. I started going through those posters because you could see the posters on the wall when I was on stage off to my left. And, so I just was going through all of those, the rules of kickboxing, and then just started doing all of these act outs and riffing off them, and then started joking about the code of conduct. And then I was making jokes about how there were even rules in the bathroom walls about, how you have to wear shoes in the bathroom, and then how you have to hold the handle down to flush the toilet, but you have to take your shoes off when you're on the mat, and all of this, different stuff. And I was having so much fun. I hit this zone to where I was totally just in the moment, just riffing off of every sort of spontaneous thought or idea that came into my mind, between the audience, between the dojo, the posters on the wall, the belts on the wall, this mannequin, who was a punching mannequin. There was a couple people in the, the front row who, one of the kids said he worked in IT, and they were kind of smart, sort of nerdy looking younger kids. I went after them, went after the woman with the purple hair. And when I say went after, I mean, I was just riffing with them and interacting with them, asking them questions, and then riffing off what they were saying. And everything was in good fun. I was having so much fun. The audience was so much fun. And then I ended the show with my token closer, which is I zeroed in on a couple who had clearly been together for a long time. Turned out they'd been married for 37 years. And I asked them about how they met. I asked them, about a little bit about their lives, all of that. And then I improvised a song about them. And that was how I closed the show. And everybody was so incredibly gracious afterwards. And I had a guy come up to me and just say, "You are so funny. How come you are not on Netflix?" Which, if only he knew. And it's like, bless his heart, because he really, it was a huge compliment, and he was very serious, that he felt that I was that funny, and that meant a lot. Unfortunately, it is a bit funny how people who are not in the comedy world don't really understand how it really works. And being really, really funny even that is such a small component to what actually launches a comedian into the type of fame and success where they can get a Netflix special, and where they can tour, and where they can get on television, and all of that. So, I would love it. I would love it if somehow I, got discovered, or had enough of a draw or enough interest out there to where somebody would want to invest the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to produce a Netflix special with me and put it out there. I'll put it this way: I am open to that, but But, that's why I do this podcast, because it's all about dreaming. And yes, that is a dream of mine. And the reality of where I am at now, I am so grateful that I get to have these gigs, that I have a buddy like Andrew who is booking me on all kinds of stuff. Anything that he can book me on that makes sense, he does. And I get to have an opportunity to entertain a small group, a unique group of individuals who are unfortunately brought together through tremendous grief and tragedy. And then my whole goal is, can I just lift these people's spirits for the 30 minutes that I'm on stage and just let them cut loose and just laugh. And, and I didn't do one joke. I didn't do one prepared material of any of my act. And that made it very easy for me to not have to try to, edit my existing material on the fly, especially any of the material that I thought might be triggering one way or the other. And I was just able to be present with the audience and connect with them, and, pretty much just spent most of the time making fun of their dojo. and the woman with dyed purple hair. So I'll tell you, it's just taking the wins where you can get them. That's where I'm at. I do have the big dream. I am not shying away from that. I would love it to have a Netflix special. I would love it if something shifted to where that was happening and that was possible. And I'm totally open to that. And that is so much of why I'm doing this podcast, is just talking through what my dreams are and what I'm experiencing on the way on this side of the dream. I feel so often we hear the famous person after they're already famous, and then we hear them go, oh yeah, well, there was a real struggle there for a couple 3 years or a couple 4 years or a couple 10 years or whatever it is. And then one day this thing happened, and for whatever reason, I have felt compelled to document the story and what I'm learning on the journey, on the path to having some sort of miraculous big dream manifest itself in my life. And so we'll get to see what happens. But I just had an amazing show, and my heart goes out to anybody who has experienced such grief and tragedy in their life. And I hope that you are finding those moments of joy and those moments of respite if you are waiting in some serious grief. And hopefully, just maybe, you can make your way out to a comedy show and have a laugh or two and pierce through the grief for at least an hour or so. And hopefully I was able to do that for the community tonight. So thank you all so much for listening. I love you all so much. And I hope your dreams are going well. You're finding joy in your journey and pushing through any grief that you might be experiencing as well. So I love you all so much. This has been the Paul Green Comedy Podcast, episode 102, March 10th, 2024. Happy Daylight Savings Day. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.